Company webinar. How to use Twitter to boost your business. My name is James Thompson and I'm the editor of smartcompany.com.au, and very lucky today to be joined by Luke McCormack from Deloitte Digital. Hi Luke, how are you?
G'day James, excellent. What about yourself?
Yeah, terrific. We've got a cracking presentation from Luke today, so we'll get there in just a sec. We'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping. As always, as I said, I'm the editor of smartcompany.com.au and the host for today. Best way to listen to today's presentation is via your computer. Audio will be automatically streamed through your computer speakers, so that's the best way to tune in. Now, Luke and I would love to take as many questions as you can throw at us during today's presentation, and we'll do our best to answer them, of course, both through the presentation and at the end. It's very easy. Just jump in the question pane that you can see in your navigation bar, type in your question and click send. And as I said, we'll get to them where relevant through the presentation and also address some at the end as well. Okay, we'd like to thank today's sponsor. The webinar is brought to you by Small Business September 2011, which is an initiative, of course, of the New South Wales Government, smallbusinessmonth.nsw.gov.au. Terrific event throughout September. Lots of events in both metro and regional areas, many of them free or low cost, so we encourage you to get to as many of those. Of course, they've got a Twitter handle, very appropriate, at Business New South Wales, and the Facebook address you can see there too, facebook.com/NSW Business. Okay, without any further ado, I'd like to come to the star of today's presentation, Luke McCormack from Deloitte Digital. Luke, welcome, and can you tell us a little bit about what Deloitte Digital does?
Thanks, James. Yeah, absolutely. So Deloitte Digital is a little bit different, I guess, to the rest of Deloitte, in that the rest of Deloitte traditionally sells hours. What Deloitte Digital does is we actually sell online products and services. So what I mean by that is we've got everything from online training right through to a product that actually allows you to rack up 100 points of identification online.
Right, so quite a mixed bag, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you've, I guess the important thing for today is developed a huge amount of expertise in the area of social media, and I guess we'd like to jump into the presentation and have a look at Twitter. We've already got a couple of questions, Luke, about one from Rich, who says, I've got a small business but nor the time nor the skills to do this. He wants to get involved, and I guess this will be a good way of showing him that it's actually not as hard as you might think.
Yeah, exactly right. So that's a very good point, James. So I mean, we use here at Deloitte, we use social media a lot, and particularly here in Deloitte Digital, Twitter is a fantastic tool that we've really been able to leverage and use quite effectively and efficiently. We also run so coming back, I guess, to what Deloitte Digital does, and also why I'm actually talking today, we actually run a social media consulting business as well inside Deloitte Digital. So we do everything from sort of high-end social media strategies right through to the actual education, implementation, and then the monitoring and measuring side of things as well. So yeah, I guess to directly answer that question there, James, I might sort of jump into my first slide, which is all about, so the thing I guess with Twitter is it gets a little bit of a bad rap, you know, every now and then in terms of, it's just a platform for, you know, a bunch of guys to tell you when and what time they're walking their dog, and I guess that's really not the case. What we've found in both our business, but also in talking to clients, it's an amazing amplification tool to really get your message out there, to spread your message, and whatever that be, you know, whether you're selling donuts or whether you're a consulting firm. It's very, very, very effective at getting your message out to a broader audience. On the question of I neither have the time, I guess, or the know-how to use it, what we've found is with a lot of our clients who have, who were in that space and who've gone, all right, we're going to invest a bit of time and we're going to invest in a bit of knowledge as well to bring ourselves up to speed. we've found that it's been an incredibly low-cost, high-return medium for things like marketing, for things like customer service, for things like building a brand, for things like risk management and governance. So it really does cover a number of, I guess, different bases in business. And the view that we take is you should look at social media, I guess, more broadly, and then more specifically Twitter, as just another option in the toolbox. So it's definitely not the be-all and end-all, but for a business that is really strapped on time and resources, it can be a very, very effective way of getting your message out there and getting your message across. The other, I guess, thing that we see a lot is Twitter users generally tend to be people like bloggers, heavy web users, people that are really have the ability and the resources to spread your message. So the more that you can build and engage with a really nice, healthy Twitter audience, it just sort of, that power really does amplify, and that's really the key here. It's about the ability to amplify your message and I guess creating an audience that is empowered to spread that message for you, and really building up relationships with your audience, your consumers, your community. And that's really the core here. We also find that a lot of journalists, and you probably find this yourself, James, a lot of journalists are now looking to Twitter for things like stories, for content, for opinions and people and all those sorts of things. Just from your own perspective, James, how have you guys sort of adopted Twitter from that journalistic perspective, if journalistic is a word there?
Yeah, look, Luke, I think you're absolutely right. For me, I must admit that it's a great source of sort of further information about a story. So you might hear something's happened, or there's a bit of breaking news, and then from there on Twitter you'll start to see the story develop. So it's a great tool for sort of following a story into its depths, I guess. A great example was the Murdoch phones hacking scandal. That was an example of where everybody was sharing links and posting interesting stories or interesting facts or recollections or whatever it might be, and it really helped to flesh out the story, I guess. I guess the other thing we should point out, Luke, for Dinesh, who asked this question, is that Twitter is entirely free to use. The investment, I guess, is in your time and skill.
Yeah, exactly right. And I've actually got a little piece of gold that I can share with the audience right at the end here, James, which is a nice little resource to bring you up to speed on a couple of things Twitter related. But yeah, that's exactly right. From a time perspective rather than a cost perspective. And I've got an interesting example later on in today's session where I can actually give you a real life example of someone investing a bit of time rather than a bit of money to get huge results from Twitter. So coming to, I guess, sort of the nuts and bolts a little bit, a couple of I guess one key interesting stat on Twitter is that in August of this year, so last month, there were 1.8 million unique Australian visitors to the site. So in terms of reach and just sheer numbers, it's definitely up there here in Australia. So obviously, in terms of Twitter, you're restricted obviously to 140 characters, as you can see up on the screen there, that little box with what's happening. And the things that you should be talking about, the things that you should be tweeting are, say for example, again I'll come back to my donuts example, say for example you're in the business of selling donuts. The content that you should be sharing will be things around the topic or the, I guess, point of interest that your audience is going to be looking to you to provide thought leadership on. So if you're selling donuts, I'd be sharing do-it-yourself donut recipes, I'd be sharing interesting videos about donuts, I'd be sharing donut articles, all of those sorts of things. So it's really about, that's sort of the first element, the sharing element. The second piece, I guess, in that makeup is listen. So, the way I treat Twitter and the way that we talk to all of our clients is it's just like having it's just another communication channel. So it's just like having, your telephone number advertised on your website. If your telephone is out there as a communication channel, and you don't pick up the phone, then that's obviously an issue. So that listening part is, make sure you listen to what people are saying out there about you, to you, and make sure you actually respond, which is sort of that third piece. Actually getting out there and building an audience and building a community and responding to that community is really important. And it can be a very simple, it can be as simple as a thank you, or here's that piece of information you were looking for, or check this link out, or whatever it is. And I guess that fourth element there is ask. So ask your audience what they think. Ask for opinions. Ask for feedback. Ask for, ask them to get involved. It's really just a matter of those simple four elements that share, listen, respond, and ask. And I guess all of the other bits and pieces will fall into how you actually go about it. A really key point here is use your authentic voice. So if you're, think about the positioning of your brand, how, what's the attitude, what's the voice of your brand, and how are the words put together on your website, how are the words put together on your marketing material, how do you present yourself to your community, to your consumers, to your audience, and Twitter should not differ to that. You should be going to market or going to, the community using these communication channels exactly the same way as what you would all the others. And then another, I guess, a question that we always get is, that's all great, but I don't have anything interesting to say, or I don't have anything interesting to share, or, it's why would anyone listen to me? And the answer to that is a term that the CEO of Deloitte Digital came up with, Pete Williams, which is, well, I don't know if he came up with it, but he definitely talks about it a lot, which is ambient content. So what we mean by ambient content is the stuff that's happening all around you every single day that you sort of, I guess, become a little bit blind to. All of that stuff is really fascinating to an audience that's interested in your organization, that's interested in your business, that's interested in your product. So, and it can be, simple things like videos of behind-the-scenes stuff, photos, little bits of information here or there, and just really giving your audience a little bit of a, I guess, access all areas pass. So coming back to my donut shop example, if you make donuts, I personally have no idea how donuts are made, so maybe there's a little video on the actual process, or maybe there's a couple of photos that go out on the morning of with the freshly glazed donuts ready to go, or whatever it is. So ambient content is stuff that's happening all around you that doesn't take much to produce, that is as simple as snapping a quick photo or grabbing a quick 30 seconds of video with your iPhone and then just uploading it straight to the web. Yep.
Luke, can I put you on the spot? Got a question from Linja. Can you give examples of what tweets might be for a real estate business? Now, I guess there's lots of ambient content around a real estate business, a new listing or a new staff member.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's plenty of interesting content that you could do for a real estate business. So it could be everything from, here's a couple of sneak peeks of a house that's just gone on the market, or here's a really interesting, so with real estate, because it's so visual, and it's all about the look and feel of a home. It's all about the look and feel of the neighborhood, all those sorts of things. So the more, I guess, as a real estate business can spread, I think is better. If you've got some amazing photos that you can send out, if you're things like, if you're, say for example, you're sitting on the balcony of a two-story house and it's sort of sunset, and there's a cracking sunset that you can see from the house or from a window of the house, I'd definitely be sharing that. All those little bits and pieces that you wouldn't really think twice about sharing. is the stuff that you want to get out there. Anything that's going to grab the audience's attention is valuable. So if you think about it from the perspective of, if I'm in the real estate game, why would someone be following me? And the question to that is, they'd be following you because they're either in the in the market to either buy or sell a home, or they're interested in getting into the market, or they're interested in real estate. So all those sorts of things. Articles around what the market is doing is always going to be interesting. So, and particularly if you work in a suburb, I guess a smaller catchment area, then any information that you have specific to that area is going to be useful. And again, all of those little bits and pieces, the thought leadership, prices, all that sort of stuff is definitely interesting. And even things like, if you've got an auction on a Saturday and you've got a big crowd that's turned out, take a photo of the crowd and shoot that up. Just say, we're auctioning off number one, whatever a street is, number one Burke Street in Melbourne. Get down and have a look because there's a big crowd here. Or, all those sorts of things.
Look, we've got about asking you to do one industry has sparked a lot of other industry people. How do I help my industry? I'm not going to ask you to go through them all, but
no dramas.
I guess what I would say is think about who your customers are and what they're interested in, and I guess someone's made a very good point, Ray, I think it is. After we've tweeted all our staff profiles and what do we do after the next few weeks? I guess that is a point to make, that once you get in the habit, finding ambient content and quickly taking a picture of something or quickly mentioning something on Twitter does become a bit of a habit, and it becomes a lot easier.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. But I'll tell you what, James. So the hashtag that I've got, and I'll come to hashtags in a moment, but the hashtag I've got down the bottom left-hand side of the screen, which is SC Webinar. If anyone does have any questions that they want to throw at me after the session is finished up, just contribute them to that hashtag or hit me up on Twitter, and more than happy to answer those questions. Or if you are a little bit more traditionally minded, the email address for myself is lmccormack@deloitte.com.au. So feel free to flick some questions through there, and I'm more than happy to answer them after the session, James.
We'll get to a few during as well. But
no dramas.
Okay,
but yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely think about what your audience is going to be interested in, and just share that content. And exactly like James said, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Yeah, that's sort of, I guess, my point on that. So things like, with the Smart Company handle, so I guess a Twitter handle is the @SmartCompany. That's the Twitter handle of Smart Company. And really what my point here is make sure you promote your channels. So everyone puts their email address and everyone puts their telephone number on their website, but think about who your audience is and think about what channels they would like to communicate with you through, and make sure you promote those channels. So if and the social media stats here in Australia are huge. So I'd sort of put the challenge out to anyone who doesn't think that their audience is on social media or doesn't listen to any of this stuff. Who doesn't, I guess, use these channels. Yeah, make sure you really promote it. So if you're having an event, make sure you promote your Twitter handle at the event, on the invite. If you're running, even things like, coming back to that real estate example, why don't you have, you've got the personal contact details of the real estate agent on the actual signage for the home. Why don't you have their Twitter handle, or, all those sorts of things. Think about the channels that you go to market, and think about how and where you can begin to promote, what you're doing through Twitter, what you're doing through social media. And then I guess the final point on this slide is search. So search.twitter.com is, in my view, the single best place for real-time search results. So you can find out what's happening on the ground at any point in time. So, for example, a bunch of us here in the office were following, everything that unfolded in Egypt and Libya live through Twitter, because the journos didn't have time to sort of push out the content fast enough, and by the time sort of the story broke on a traditional news site, it was already all over Twitter, and we knew exactly what was happening. So think about your industry, think about your audience, think about your topic, and I guarantee there's a bunch of content already out there that you can contribute to, and all using that real-time search.twitter.com. So that is a huge tool that I would definitely encourage everyone to use, because it's incredibly valuable from a business perspective. So I guess, James, very quickly, I'm just conscious of time here. I want to make sure we get through it all so we can get some questions out of the way. Moving on to hashtags. So what a hashtag is, for those of you who don't know, I'll very quickly run through it, is it's a very simple way of, I guess, indexing your tweet against a broader topic. So the hashtag for today is SC webinar. So all you need to do is put a little hash symbol or the pound symbol if you're in the States, followed by whatever the hashtag is that you would like. So today I've obviously just gone with Smart Company Webinar. A really nice way to do it is if you come up with a unique hashtag like Smart Company Webinar, then you can really begin to track and analyze the results. But it can be anything. So if you're talking about the superannuation industry, you put sort of superannuation as a hashtag against some of your tweets. So then a wider audience can begin to find the content that you're pushing out. So hashtags are a really nice way to not only get your content out to a broader audience, but also begin to measure and track some of the results that are coming through Twitter. Now, this little screenshot that I've got up on the screen at the minute is a product that one of the guys in Deloitte built, and it's basically tweetviz.com. And what it allows you to do is it gives you a really nice visualization of any particular topic that's coming through on hashtags. So here at Deloitte, if we're running an event, we'll always make sure that we have, we'll have the main presentation screen going with PowerPoint and all that sort of stuff. Then we'll also make sure we have a secondary screen, whether that's a TV screen or whether it is actually a projector, with TweetViz running. And we'll always make sure that we allocate a hashtag to a particular event. And what that allows your audience to do is begin the conversation happening off, I guess, in the back channel or online. So you can really get the conversation started before the event kicks off, and you can continue it well after the event's finished. So again, coming back to the hashtag for today, Smart Company Webinar, I can see that there's a bunch of tweets that are being dumped into that particular conversation. So I'll jump in afterwards and make sure I answer a few questions. So hashtags in combination with TweetViz are a nice way. If you are having a physical event, even if you have a retail store, why don't you have a TV screen, a plasma on the wall or at the counter or whatever it is, with a bunch of tweets mentioning your business that are appearing up on the screen.
And just to Luke, just to step in and answer a question from Carol, tracking a hashtag, that can be done through the search function of Twitter.
Yep, absolutely. So you can do that definitely through the Twitter search function, which again, if you can either do that right at the very top of Twitter, just on the right-hand side of the Twitter logo, or you can actually do it at search.twitter. It's 6 of one, half a dozen the other. But then there's also a tool that you can actually measure the reach of a particular hashtag, which I'll come to in a moment's time. So then the other thing that you want to be thinking about as well is, so I'm on Twitter, I'm talking with a bunch of people, but am I talking to the right people, and is the audience that I guess I'm talking with the right audience for me? So Listorious, which is just listorious.com, is a really great way of finding subject matter experts and finding key influencers in your industry. So again, if you're selling donuts, jump on Listorious, search for donuts, find all of the people that are the key influencers, and the way Listorious works is they'll rank them from highest number of followers, which in simple terms is most influential, through the lowest number of followers. So make sure you start following these people, make sure you start engaging in the community, make sure you begin engaging around your particular topic. So again, if you're in the real estate game, there's a guy, I forget his first name, but his surname is Toop, and he runs a weekly, I think it is, a weekly TV podcast, which he just sticks up on YouTube, which is called Toop TV. So make sure you reach out to these kinds of people who have already amassed quite a large audience, who are talking about this stuff day in, day out. Reach out to them, engage with them, make sure that you become sort of that subject matter expert. So yeah, Listorious is a really nice tool there. So I guess that's a nice lead in from that last question, James, around how do we actually begin measuring a hashtag. So there's a website which is tweetreach.com, which allows you to plug in any particular phrase, any particular topic, or in this case, any particular hashtag. So I'll give you a real-life example. We, here at Deloitte, we run a collaboration with the RMIT Bachelor of Business Entrepreneurship students. The third-year students in their final, basically the capstone subject of that particular course is to do a 13-week project with us here in Deloitte Digital. So last year what we did is we created a unique hashtag for the event. So it was Deloitte Fast Track, which allowed us to track what was being said right across the semester around this particular topic. And then what we did is on the very last day, so the results that you've got up on your screen at the moment is the results from the final presentation. So what we did is I sat up the back of the room with a laptop, and I was basically tweeting out content from the presentation for the full 2 hours or whatever it was for the final presentation. So I think we had about 5 groups. Each of them presented on their particular project that they had undertaken throughout the year. And so these results here, so we're looking at the TweetReach results for Deloitte Fast Track. So we reached 19,703 people via 164 tweets. You can see the breakdown there, and then the actual impressions was 92,519 impressions. So the way we did that was basically one person, me, tweeting from the back of the room for 2 hours with a laptop. So we presented to probably about 40 people, and we've actually managed to reach 19,000 people. So if we were to go out and do a presentation to 19,000 people, we'd probably have to have hired out Rod Laver Arena. So that sort of comes back to the actual reach and power of Twitter. Using one laptop, we were able to spread the message really quickly, really fast, and get it out, as I said, to 19,000 people, which for an RMIT presentation is fairly impressive in my books. Now the next slide, which is just populating up on everyone's screen as we speak, I think it's taking a moment there, so I might just talk to it, is some more results on that Fast Track challenge. So what we actually found was it was in the 2 hours when we launched it, we were actually one of the top trending topics in Melbourne on Twitter for that particular day. So you can see the slides popping up there now. So the only person that ousted us was Pat Rafter was announced as the Davis Cup coach, I think, at the time. So Fast Track, as you can see there, was the second highest trending topic in Melbourne. And the really beautiful part from our perspective was we actually had, so this tweet here that I've got down the bottom of the screen from GVRV, what is Deloitte Fast Track, and is it only limited to RMIT or open for all universities? So the the objective that we set out with at the top of this was, how do we make sure that there's a bunch of other universities, there's a bunch of other university students, and a bunch of other professional services firms that are seeing what we're doing and going, hey, that's really cool. We should be doing that. So from that tweet, so this guy turns out he's actually a Monash University student saying, what is Fast Track and how do I get involved? So, in terms of the objective of making sure that we got it out and made sure that a few other university students saw it, we sort of ticked that box when it came to that, which was nice. So that's a nice little example from one of the events that we ran using a unique hashtag. The next example that I want to show you is out of the States, an organisation called Best Buy, who I guess are equivalent, I guess, to a sort of an upmarket JB Hi-Fi, if you like. They're basically a retailer that sells tech products, TVs and that sort of stuff. In terms of social media, if you want a best-in-class lesson on social media, Best Buy are brilliant. Everything that they do is pretty much on the money in the social media space. So this particular Twitter example is that Best Buy sort of obviously came to the realisation that their key asset is the knowledge of the staff that they have working on the floor. So they, who they call the blue shirts, as you can see there, they're all obviously wearing blue shirts, so they're fairly original in that space. But yeah, so that was their key asset. The guys with all the knowledge that work the floor every day are our biggest asset. So the objective was, or I guess the question was, how do we extend the knowledge of all of these guys past the walls of the store? So how do we extend the knowledge of our staff beyond just the stores? And so what they came up with was this concept of, which they call TWELP Force, which stands for Twitter Help, or Expert Technical Help, as Best Buy refer to it. So essentially how it works is they put together this concept, TWELP Force, promoted it really heavily in store and out through all of their communication channels. And the bottom line here is, if anyone has any kind of a tech question about whatever it is, all you need to do is mention TWELP Force in a tweet, throw out the question, and all of the Best Buy employees are available around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from right across the states. And basically there's an enormous themselves around who can answer that question the fastest, and as Best Buy refer to it, the bestest. So yeah, it's basically they've empowered all of their employees to answer any questions that come through around technology, and they're incredibly fast. So we've mentioned them in a couple of presentations recently, and we might send out a quick tweet saying talking about Best Buy's TWELP Force, and within about 15 minutes, someone who works at TWELP Force will come back and say, thanks for the tweet, whatever it is. But yeah, in terms of tech questions, they're all over it. And the beauty of this particular topic here is what they've been able to do is build a brand around the fact that Best Buy not only know technology incredibly well, but they also live technology. So their people are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They don't get paid for it, by the way. It's a completely voluntary project that the employees take upon themselves on the side, and yeah, they're basically just sort of racing each other to answer all the questions that come through.
And
you got a question, James?
Yeah, I should say here, Luke, that there's probably no better way to highlight your expertise than answering a question for someone. And I think this again gets back to that, if you're a law firm or accountant who might struggle with what content to go with, just being seen when somebody's having a whinge about tax or some sort of accounting issue, being able to tweet them and say, hey, whatever their hashtag is, we've got some solutions to help you with that, is a great way to sort of to put yourself in the frame.
Yeah, exactly. A really good example is early days of Twitter, back in about 2008. There was this guy, Richard Tuff, and I think, and basically what he would do is any tweet mentioning the term AFL, he would reply to. Right? Now, the sheer volume of AFL tweets today has sort of skyrocketed in comparison to what it was in 2008. But, he would just engage on whatever it was AFL. So, I remember him and I used to have quite a number of discussions. I'm a massive AFL head. Quite a few discussions back in '08 around AFL, and that's created a relationship between himself and I, where every now and then we'll exchange a few tweets around AFL. But yeah, back in the early days of Twitter, he would answer every single AFL question. So the same sort of thing goes. If you're in law, obviously the volume of legal topics and legal terms that come through Twitter is going to be massive. But if you can, go, all right, I'm going to spend 20 minutes a day replying to however many I can get out in that 20 minutes, very, very quickly your audience is going to build quite rapidly. And the same goes, if you're in the real estate game, or if you're in the superannuation game, or if you sell books, or if you sell wine glasses, or whatever it is. Regardless of what you sell, regardless of what you do, or regardless of what your business is, there's always a topic that you can engage around. So yeah, I think that's the key takeaway there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now the next business that I wanted to talk about is a business that's predominantly based out of Melbourne, business called Hall. And what Hall do is they take, so again, I sort of wanted to bring it back a little bit from a massive tech organisation in the States to more of a small business based out of Melbourne. So Hall, what they basically do is they take billboards, recycle them, and turn them into things like bags, into iPad cases, into laptop sleeves, all those sorts of things. And they've built a really nice brand over time, and they've built a really nice attitude around their brand. So Gus the Boxer, who is the Hall mascot, who sits in their store in Fitzroy, sits in their window, is really positioned as, I guess, the face of Hall in a way, as the Hall mascot. And then Scott Kilmartin, who is the founder and head honcho over at Hall, he again has positioned himself really nicely in alignment with the business values, and also with Gus the Boxer obviously being his dog. And so what I really love about Hall is they've created this really authentic, real, edgy brand, and the way that they've done it has been brilliant. And their use of social media, and in particular Twitter, is particularly impressive. So I'll go through a quick example which I saw from Scott, from Hall, and from Gus the Boxer yesterday, where basically they had a question around order times. So I think it's just about populated up on everyone's screens now. So Betsy came out with this question, which is the one in the top left, which says, Hall, is your store open Tuesday, Friday, Saturday in Melbourne? In Melbourne for the week. If I order today, would it be at my hotel by Thursday? By the way, Anthony told me about you. So then 3 minutes later, the official Hall Twitter account comes back with, hi Betsy, which city is your hotel in? If it's Melbourne, the answer is yes. If Sydney, Brisbane or Canberra or Adelaide, then choose Express Post. Then Betsy comes back with, Hall, I'm in Melbourne this week, booked tomorrow and flying to Sydney on Friday morning, so I won't be able to make it in. I love recycled goods. Then a minute later, again, the official Hall Twitter account comes back with, cool, put your order through today before 3 p.m. and it'll go out tonight, and you'll have it by Thursday. So just that simple piece of conversation. There was 2 tweets sent out by Hall, and really quickly, suddenly, a question that a customer has had has been answered in a really nice, succinct way. And then basically what happens after that is, there's a bit more back and forth between Hall and Betsy. Then Scott Kilmartin, who's obviously the founder and head honcho at Hall, he jumps in and they have a bit of back and forth around basketball. And then finally, Scott says, good to hear, it's quite the empire he's built post-hoops, again, talking about the basketball conversation they had. And then he says, let me know if you need any help ordering at Hall. And then Betsy comes back with, Scott, thanks. We'll order this afternoon for delivery to my Melbourne hotel. I was hoping to see your dog and shop next Australian visit. So the thing that I love about this interaction is suddenly there's a consumer that has a question. The question is answered really succinctly and very, very effectively. Then Scott and her actually have a bit of back and forth around basketball. They connect around a topic. There's a relationship built between the brand and her. And then, she comes back with, thanks, I'll put my order through. So we go from the point of a consumer having a question right through to the point where a consumer has actually made a purchase. And the actual investment on Scott's part, is basically 2 tweets from Hall, a couple of tweets from himself around basketball. Total time investment is probably about 5 minutes. And I bet, you talk to a retail customer for longer than that if they walk into a store. So, and then the other beautiful thing about this particular interaction is Betsy, in the very first tweet, says, Anthony told me about you. So then Hall follows up with a quick thank you tweet for Anthony, to Anthony, I should say. So they say, hey, Anthony, thanks for telling Betsy about us, blah, blah, blah. And then after, right at the last bit, when Betsy says, I was hoping to see your dog and shop, she's obviously talking about Gus the boxer. Gus actually comes back with a quick tweet, says hello, and gives her a link to his Facebook fan page. So that's beautiful interaction, and that's really the way it should go down when you're talking about service, when you're talking about relationship building, when you're talking about replying to a customer on Twitter. That's a great example. So in terms of from question through to purchase, if you want an ROI on Twitter, then that's exactly it there. And then the other thing is, of course, that the relationship has been established between Betsy and Scott. I can guarantee when she goes back overseas from wherever she lives, she's definitely going to be talking about this particular interaction when she gets home.
Luke, can I ask you a question that Derek's posed? If you could just go back to that page. And Derek's got a great question about keeping business and personal tweets separate.
Sure.
Scott's done a great job, I think, in that example just then, actually, of using the business account, which I guess he might use and a few other people might use, and his personal account.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do follow Scott, so I know that he tweets on everything from footy to, what him and his mates are doing on the weekend. Is this a good example of how you can get the personal and the business account working in tandem and complementing each other?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, my question around this always is, Scott runs Hall. Scott is, for all intents and purposes, the face of Hall. So, can he ever separate himself from Hall? And then the question also is, does he want to separate himself from Hall? So I think, I think this is a great example where, as you said, Hall has jumped in as the business account, answered the business questions, and then Scott has a particular interest. Again, Scott's a mate of mine, and I know he lived over in the States for a number of years, so he's got a particular interest around basketball. So then he's jumped in to have that personal, element to this particular interaction. So look, I mean, it all comes down to, if you really want to separate the personal side from the business side, it's very, very simple to do. You obviously just have a business account, and you just use your business stream as exactly that, the business channel. But I guess I put a bit of a challenge out to all small business owners. Is there really a separation between yourselves and your business. You know, if you're in the real estate game, you know, it's all about the personal relationship that's built. So, but yeah, look, very, very simple to separate it from the business. Sorry, from the personal side and the business side. Does that kind of answer the question there, James?
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right, we better push on, Luke, because the questions keep mounting and
Excellent.
time's on the wing.
Cool. So one last final example is one of my favourite online personalities, a guy called Gary Vaynerchuk, who is a loud, obnoxious New Yorker. You either love him or you hate him. And essentially, Gary, regardless of whether you do love him or you hate him, he wrote this brilliant book earlier in the year called The Thank You Economy, which is around actually social media, funnily enough. He released pre-sales of the book, so you could actually, the book wasn't on sale yet, but what you could do in February this year is you could jump on Amazon and put in a pre-order. So the book had not even gone to the printing press yet, but you could still sort of pre-order your book. So basically what Gary did is he jumped on Twitter for about, and I was watching this interaction and I was watching what he was doing taking place. It was a Friday in New York, obviously a Saturday here in Melbourne, and Gary was basically sitting on Twitter for about 5 to 6 hours. And he was pumping out content around the fact that the book was, you know, you could now pre-order the new book. So I've got a couple of quick examples of the tweet that he was sending out. So what he did, not only was he promoting it, but he was also saying, you know, there's a little bit, you know, I'm going to, I guess, give back to the community. So saying, if you pre-order the new book, The Thank You Economy, and a link to it now, send me the receipt to Gary at VaynerMedia.com. So he started off this particular day when he started his big, you know, 5 to 6 hour Twitter stint. The book was number 14,259 in the world. By this point here, just using Twitter, had pushed it up to number 13 in the world, and he was sort of gunning for number 1. And then later on that day, you know, huge news. We're now up 139,000%, and are now number 10 in the world. We broke the top 10 books in the world. Thank you. Need one last push. So the bottom line here is, with a 5 to 6 hour investment on Twitter, which I understand for all small businesses is enormous. You know, it's essentially a full day. But if you look at the results, so this is a screenshot that I took when Gary sort of finally called it quits at about 3 a.m. New York time. And this is a screenshot of the movers and shakers list on Amazon. So 1,000%. Sales rank in books was 5, and 14,259 yesterday. So essentially what I'm saying here is, for a 5 to 6 hour time investment on Gary's part, sitting on Twitter, he took the sales of his book from 14,000 to number 5 in the world, without outlaying a dollar. Albeit, you know, the time investment was fairly large. However, the book hadn't gone to the printing press yet, so suddenly he knew, you know, exactly how much demand there was going to be for the book. You know, he's made himself a heap of cash in terms of, so when you actually pre-order the book, you know, the cash goes through to him. So in terms of the cash flow that was created through that is enormous. So again, coming back to that, you know, if you want some ROI from Twitter, that's it right there. Very quickly, James, I'll skip to how we use Twitter here at Deloitte. So we use it a number of different ways. The Deloitte Australia Twitter account, the prime focus there is on recruitment. You know, we're in the people business. We sell hours, so then there's 2 ways for us to grow. The first is we create more hours in a day, or we hire more people. So recruitment is a massive focus for us. And then Deloitte Digital, we again push out a bunch of content around, just everything from what we're doing here in the office. Our CEO, it was his birthday a couple of months ago, and we actually made him an Angry Birds cake, and that was big. Everything from that through to thought leadership and what's happening actually out in the marketplace and out in the business. And then what we also do is we've got a blog which we contribute to. Actually, Ellison HR is the number one lady behind our blog, so if you want someone to follow on Twitter, get across and follow her. And what we also do is we pull through any mention of Deloitte Digital on Twitter is published straight through to the blog as well. So the key thing I want to leave you with here is think about entanglement. So think about, again, where can I promote Twitter? What channels do I go out to my audience with? And how can I really make sure that no matter what channel my audience comes down, so whether it's social media, whether it's the website, whether it's the telephone, whether it's visiting my physical retail or my real estate business, they're sort of getting the same picture, the same message, the same tone, the same brand, and make sure that everything you do is entangled and entwined so that, as a Gen Y, if I want to interact with your business via Twitter, I have that option, or if I want to pick up the phone and interact with your business, I have that option as well. And then the very last piece of information I'm going to leave you with, James, is if everyone that is interested in sort of growing that Twitter audience and using it for business, have a look at business.twitter.com, which is a page published by Twitter for with the exact objective of giving you information on how you can use Twitter in your business and how you can really grow your audience. So yeah, business.twitter.com. It's from Twitter, and yeah, it's a very nice source of content there. So with that said, James, I'm going to leave it there, and let's see if we can get through some of these questions. Have we lost James there?
Sorry, Luke.
No, you're right. I was just saying that check out business.twitter.com, which is a nice little source of content, and then I thought I'd leave it there and let's see if we can get through some questions.
Beautiful. All right, a quick one about monitoring. How to monitor tweets about your business. And your personal account if you have one too. Is there I use TweetDeck. Is there a bit of technology you'd suggest?
Yeah, absolutely. TweetDeck is a great one. You can set up a number of different columns inside the tool where you can have a look at what's going on right across your personal personal, business and other. Hootsuite is also a nice little product which I particularly like. You've got a bunch of analytics in the back end and that sort of thing as well, so you can actually track who's clicking on your links, when they're clicking on them, all those sorts of things. But yeah, really simply, if you want a really simple tool, just use the search functionality, I should say, got there in the end. Use the search functionality in Twitter, which is really simple to use. It's just right up the top, the search bar, so you can plug in anything there, whether it's your Twitter handle or whether it's actually a hashtag and use it that way.
Or even a word that pertains to your company name or the sort of the name of a topic that you're interested in.
Yeah, definitely. Topics, company names, people, hashtags, the full works.
Okay. A couple of Twitter etiquette questions, Luke. Should you automatically follow people back?
Look, that's a tough one. It really comes down to what your objective is. The golden rule, I will say, is never follow more people that are following you, because that just says you don't have a whole lot of friends. So yeah, make sure you're always following a couple less than are following you, just as a little golden rule there. A lot of people do subscribe to the follow back. Look, if you're a business, my advice is, anyone that has the decency to follow you, you probably should follow them back as an organisation. So, particularly at Deloitte Digital, we try and follow back as many people as we can.
You've made me feel bad about my followers, Luke, but that's okay.
Yeah, I was looking at yours earlier, James, and I was
a bit sad.
Cursing you.
Question from Emily, just following on from that. What's your opinion on either manual or automatic welcome tweets when someone does follow you?
Hate them, absolutely hate them, because you know that it's automated, you know it's not real, you know it's not personal. So yeah, everyone out there, turn off those automatic "thank you for following me" messages that most people get spammed with on a daily basis.
Okay. A question from, there's probably 15 people have asked this same question.
Sure.
And it's around how often should you tweet. And I know this is a bit of a how long's a bit of string question.
Yep.
But I guess we need to say, Luke, that you don't necessarily have to be as attentive as, say, Hall is, where they're trying to get to people within a few minutes.
Well, I mean, Hall are particularly sharp, obviously. I mean, look, Hall sell iPad, MacBook cases and that sort of thing. So they're almost ingrained in technology. So they need to be sharp and attentive and across it. If you're a retail store selling, cups, it's probably fine for you to, reply to your tweets at the end of every day, or at the end of every 2 days, or whatever it is. That's fine. So I guess the answer to that is make sure you tweet when you have something interesting to say. The golden rule here is it's a very fine line between too much and too little. Make sure for the average business, make sure you're tweeting maybe 1 or 2 times a day. Make sure you're replying to all the people that need replying to. Make sure you're sharing a little bit of content. Obviously it's very, very easy for someone to click the follow button, but it's also as easy for them to click the unfollow button. So make sure you're spreading content that's really interesting, that's really engaging, and that your audience is going to be interested in.
So Greg's got a great question. He's a one-man band, home-based business.
Yep.
How should he manage it? I mean, for him, might it be as simple as putting aside 20 minutes or 15 minutes or 10 minutes every day where he jumps on, checks if there's anything he needs to reply to, and tweets out something? It might be a link to an interesting story for his industry or a new bit of content he's made. Would that be a way for him to get started?
Yeah, absolutely. Spend, whether it's, 20 minutes first thing in the morning and, another 5 minutes later that day or whatever it is. Yeah, just allocate a small chunk of time. Probably everyone jumps on, logs on first thing in the morning and rips through the inbox. So just add Twitter on to the end of that. Spend 5-10 minutes after that having a bit of a look at Twitter, making sure you're flicking out a couple of interesting bits and pieces and replying to whatever tweets have come through. If you're a one-man band, that can be a really simple way of managing it.
How do you know, Luke, when you're overdoing it?
Yeah, good question. So again, coming back to that fine line, I mean, if you're running an event, so say for example, here at Deloitte Digital, if we're running an event and we have a guest speaker, we'll be pumping out a heap of content around what that particular guest speaker is saying. So if you've got interesting stuff that's happening, it's definitely, you can definitely tweet to your heart's content. But if you're not tweeting things of value, if you're not tweeting things of interest, and you're not engaging with your audience, then that's probably you're probably overdoing it a little bit there. And if you're tweeting stuff like I just had a cup of tea, then that's probably overdoing it as well.
Yeah, I guess think about what you like to, how many times you like to be hit on Twitter, and that's not a bad goal, though. Not a bad guide, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as I said, for the average small business, 1 to 2 tweets a day is probably a really nice mix.
Yeah. Launching or building your audience. Luke.
Yep.
Any tips for that? I mean, I guess letting people know through other communication channels that you already use, whether it be email or your website, letting people know that you're on Twitter is probably the first point. Stick it on your email
Yeah.
signature.
Absolutely. Yeah, go out to the audience that you've already spent, the last, X number of years building and think about the database you have as a business. And just go out and, as your first point of call, go and engage with them. Then jump on, Listorious and have a look at who's in the community and who's talking about. And then go out and have a look at all the blogs that are out there on your particular topic, and make sure you leave a comment on the blogs, engage with the bloggers, and begin to build an audience that way. So it's really just a matter of investing a bit of time, whether that is, like you said, James, 20 minutes a day or 20 minutes a week even, and just spending a bit of time and going, all right, who can I talk to, who's the audience that I want to build, who are the people that I want to attract, and putting a bit of thought into how to actually get to them. So, blogs and other topics and all those sorts of things, I think is a great way. And yeah, like you said, mate, make sure you, as your first point of call, engage with the audience that you already have, being, your email database, being, the people that come and visit you at a store, being, your clients, being your wholesalers, being your suppliers, all those sorts of people. Are definitely a good place to start.
Question from Charles and Elizabeth.
Sorry, mate, just to interrupt. Just had a fantastic tweet that's come through from Anna McDonald, McDougall, I should say. And if you want to follow her, it's Anna J. McDougall on Twitter. But she says, we feature tweets and emails and reviews, including Twitter and Facebook logos on all emails, blog highlights and newsletter, and sort of draw people online. I think that's a great way of doing things. Feature a couple of tweets in your emails or your reviews or whatever it is, and people go suddenly, everyone loves their couple of minutes of fame. So, the more you can thank, engage, and give back to your audience, I think the faster you're going to build that audience.
Yeah, great call. Question from Elizabeth and Charlie, Luke. They both work in industries where the contact with clients involves a lot of confidential information that I guess they can't tell the world about on Twitter.
Sure.
Their question is, how do they approach that? Could they look at, I guess, things that, we're getting a lot of questions about topic X at the moment. Here's a blog post.
Yeah, absolutely.
Subject. Or make the specific a bit more general to broaden the appeal of that content?
Yeah, we do that a lot at Deloitte as well. I mean, obviously we deal with a range and a number of clients that, don't particularly want us talking about them in the public arena. So yeah, we definitely do things like that. We're finding we're getting a lot of questions around topic X. We'll push out a blog post about it, or we'll do a couple of tweets on it, or whatever it is. So yeah, that's definitely a really nice way to do things. If you're dealing with a lot of confidential information, chances are you're probably a specialist in a particular topic. So spreading information and I guess content around that topic, I think is a really nice way to do things as well. And I guess that sort of comes back to, we're getting a lot of questions about X. Here's a few answers. But yeah, if you're dealing with a lot of confidential information and you're dealing with a lot of clients that obviously don't want you talking about them, just feel free to remove the specifics and still talk about loosely around sort of what you're doing.
Luke, a few people, I guess particularly in the industrial sphere, have asked whether they can't seem to find many of their customers or stakeholders, I guess, on Twitter.
Yep.
Should they put the time in, or should they look to concentrate on those communication channels where the customers are already talking to each other?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's a very, it really comes down to your particular business. You know, I'm not going to pretend for a moment that I'm an expert in anyone else's business. So it really comes down to if you truly believe that your consumers or your audience or your customers are not going to be interacting via social media, then it's probably worth putting some thought into actually whether or not you should invest the time in it. But look, the question that I sort of put to people a lot is, you know, the business may not be there, or the suppliers or the consumers from a
company. We have had some technical difficulties, and I think we've lost Luke. As he said, he welcomes our tweets at #SC webinar. So get onto him there, or try his email, luke@deloittedigital.com. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance today. We'll wrap the webinar up there and thank, as we go out, our sponsor, Small Business September 2011, for their sponsorship today of today's webinar. Also like to thank our terrific audience. We've had lots of tweets and lots of questions, so we do hope we've got to as many as we can, and we look forward to addressing some more as we go along. Apologies for the technical issues at the end, and we look forward to joining you again on Smart Company webinars. Thanks a lot.